Welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents, Episode 2, Lancer. I'm Ross Payton, and here with me are my co-hosts Greg Stolze and James Wallace as we discuss the sci-fi mecha tactical combat RPG that you, the backers, voted on for us to discuss next. So, again, thank you all for backing our Kickstarter, and I'm quite excited to talk about this role-playing game. Of course, in our terms of our before we get to discussion, we will have a preview or episode survey up soon for you to vote on what we talk about in episode 3, and we'll have updates on the Kickstarter page with the winner probably by the time you listen to this. Lancer is a tactical combat-focused role-playing game that was released in 2019 by Massive Press. And Massive Press is essentially two main developers, Miguel Lopez and Tom Parkinson Morgan. They are known previously for the webcomic Kill 6 Billion Demons, which has a very distinctive art style and, of course, writing style. They kickstarted Lancer a year or two before it was released, I believe. It is a thick boy. It is 432 pages, beautiful full color. Yes, the basic premise is that it's the far future, and you are a Lancer, a mecha pilot, and you are sent out to the most dire situations to save the day. Before we get into the nitty-gritty too much, that's sort of the very, very big view. Yeah, Greg, what do you want to say first about Lancer?
Okay. Well, I'll agree. That book is beautiful and big, massive indeed. In my mind, the sizes of large books, it's like, okay, there's the doorstop book, then there's the book where, my mental rubric is, if I threw that at a burglar, would the burglar be stunned? And this is definitely, maybe even a little bigger than that. I'm like, I think this thing might have the heft to crack bone. It's big and heavy. And I was very excited to get it, but not as excited as my son was, because when he saw it, he's like, I've seen that artwork online. That's Lancer. That's Lancer.
Yeah. Lancer is...
Can I have it when you're done with it? I'm like, my library is open to you, my boy.
Aw. Lancer does have a very active fan base. There is a very active Discord with something like 6,000 members. People talking, providing advice and talking about the game and its setting and the rules and how to run it. There's also a lot of fan support for the game, including, let's see here, Retrograde Minis, which is a website where you can create artwork, pixel artwork to represent your mecha. There are various Patreons offering scripting services for virtual tabletop, so you can run your game through a virtual tabletop like Foundry more easily. And then, of course, there's CompCon, which started as a fan project, and the developers paid, the developer of CompCon, so it becomes an official product. And that is a web-based app that lets you create characters and encounters, and is basically handles a lot of the bookkeeping of Lancer. So, yeah, it's a very modern game in the sense of how the community is built, how the developers choose to support it. James, what are your initial thoughts on Lancer before we get into our questions?
I was and am a colossal fan of Kill 6 Billion Demons. I've been reading it almost since the start. It's incredibly narratively rich, imaginative, often just bizarre world setting. The characters are really well drawn, and narratively and literally as well. And when I heard they were doing a giant robot game, it was like, wait, what? But I bet it's going to be, and I had this picture in my head of what it was going to be with all this the kind of things that I've always wanted from a giant robot game, which is not one of my favorite genres, I have to say. And it is not that game. I was not expecting something with this much crunch and mechanical detail to it. I really was not. And that put me off it as I was starting in. I was not expecting the opening to be 2 pages of background and then 3 pages of this is how the mechanics will work in the preface, before you've even started properly reading the thing. That said, there's an awful lot in there. There are riches in there in this book. I've only read it as PDF. I've not been working out my biceps with the physical version.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is not a game I'm ever going to run or probably play because it is not my style. But I had a lot of fun reading it.
Yeah, before we get into what it does and how it does, I would say one of the things about Lancer that really sets it apart from other mecha games, and I'm thinking most right now of Battletech, but it has a very different style of like what mechs are and what mechs can do. And it really leans into the weird sci-fi element of, paracausality and, science so advanced it's basically magic style rather than the Battletech. I have big mech with big laser cannons and missiles, and I fire them, and I have heat sinks to deal with that, and that's it. Lancer mechs get weird,
but they don't. They don't all get weird. It's just the Horus ones that are weird.
No, I mean even the other things. If you look into higher levels,
some of the you can get weird.
You can get weird. You can choose a more traditional mech that just is fast or is big, and
But this dichotomy goes back to the beginning of robot anime in Japan, where there's always been a division between what they call the super robots, which are basically magic, and the real robots, which are exemplified by Gundam in Japan and Battletech in the West, which are the ones where you kind of feel that there's a actual science, or at least pretend science, underlying the way they work and the mechanics by which they work.
At least pretend science. That's a lovely phrase.
But you know what I mean. It's kind of everything knits together, and and you feel there's a realism to it, and a grittiness to it. Battletech robots, it's not just they have heat sinks; they also have crews of people to maintain them. Lancer robots, you get damage in a battle, 3D. It's just assumed that you will 3D print replacement components and fit them yourself before the next battle. It hand waves an awful lot of stuff out of the way. And yes, I will come on to some of my problems with that later on.
Yeah, I mean, Lancer is very meaningful where it chooses to be complex and where it chooses not to be complex. Unlike, the Battletech style of games. So I think that's an important discussion to have.
Yes, but let's also not forget, Battletech started very, very much, it was a tabletop game that spun off role-playing and video game components. Lancer comes on as a role-playing game. It sells itself as a role-playing game. But I think the heart of it is a figures on the tabletop experience, or virtual figures on Roll20.
Yeah.
Something I noted down, and this is less about the bifurcation. When for a framework of what it does, how it does it, the things that jumped out at me for what it does is in the setting. I'm like, okay, so this is a game about a future utopia of universal rights and post-scarcity plenty and human fulfillment, and also giant mech fights. And I'm like, it's okay, how are they going to square that circle? And I think they did a pretty nice job of squaring that circle, actually, because it's like, okay, the utopian awesomeness, that's the core worlds, and that is aspirational, and it's not perfect. It's always a work in progress, but you are probably not going to be having giant mech fights in the core worlds. You are going to be having them out on the edge where people are resisting the core worlds and are still saying things like, oh, no, clones aren't people. That's why it's okay to enslave them. And where, there is all this techno-barbarianism that needs to be suppressed by means of giant robot fights.
Yeah. The setting is very interesting, but the way it is presented is very much this is very open-ended and very loosely defined, so you can create your own space within this setting for your own story. In that regard, it actually reminds me a lot of Warhammer and Warhammer 40K, especially because the idea is that the galaxy is vast and there are many planets and many systems. So you can add whatever you want into it, because within this framework, a lot of things can make sense or can be made to fit into the setting.
I did feel, I don't know, and this may be me being unfair, so if one of the writers of this wants to come at me, I will withdraw it. But And because I did not do a profound, deep, multiple page reading, and I didn't play, or, I didn't read it multiple times and cross-reference it. But it did seem to me that they were more interested in writing up the systems for Mech Mayhem. It's like, okay, well, here's what this specific gun does and how it does it. Mm-hmm. Had a lot more sort of flavor and energy to it than, what was it that... It was in the GMing section, and it's like, well, here's a bunch of situations you might be called in to lance at. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those, I'm like, this reads exactly like a D&D thing, right down to having an evil baron. Uh-huh. And so...
it is more the theatrical backdrop style of D&D. So to give some context, I think... The biggest design inspiration that Lancer draws from is the 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, which is the black sheep of the Dungeons and Dragons family, because it has a very sort of focused and obvious design intent, which is to separate narrative and combat play, and to have a very, very clear game about what you can and can't do in combat, and then to leave narrative free form. And D&D in particular, it's like, well, there's the kingdom with the king, and there's monsters. Go fight the monsters. Like we were talking about in Outlaws of the Water Margin, is very much not a culture game with a very specific thing. It is very vague, so you can sort of create it as you want, but yeah, so that's, I think, the most important thing is that it is drawing from D&D, actually, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I liked the powerful bifurcation between mech fights and everything else, and I think that is a strength for this game, that it knows exactly what it wants to be, and it is that good and hard.
Yeah,
and it knows what its players want to be as well. They want this is a game very much for people who want to pilot giant robots, slugging the hell out of other giant robots. This does not deconstruct the giant robot art form. This does not take Neon Genesis Evangelion and run with some of its concept. The only thing you are deconstructing in this game is other giant robots, and you are doing it with your fists. The way it splits down into, it splits into 3 parts. And you say D&D 4. D&D 4 is the only edition of D&D that I've never actually owned, apart from 2 and 3.5. What it reminded me of, the way it splits, because it's not just your character combat and the giant robot combat. The first thing I thought of was Car Wars, but there's a third part, there's downtime, and we covered downtime partly in Blades in the Dark, but the way it splits very discreetly into 3 self-contained, mechanically separate chunks reminded me of free-to-play mobile role-playing games on your phone, which I play an awful lot of, and they do very much the same thing. There will be the interface where you do the plot stuff, the interface where you fight stuff, and the interface where you level your character and your gear. And those are mechanically separate. Numbers feed from one to the other, and obviously you can log from one to the other. But in terms of their design, they are very discrete and distinct.
And they feel different, right?
They really feel different, yes.
Yeah, this is I think been a trend in a lot of role-playing games. Within the last decade.
Sorry, I've forgotten the point of saying all that.
Okay,
the point, because this feeds into something else, the way that Lancer's leveling systems work, the license level and things like that. Every time you level, you get points that you can feed into something else. It feels really gamified. And gamified, of course, comes out of particularly mobile games because it's about player retention and about ideally separating you from your money. There's less of that going on within Lancer. But it felt gamified. It felt that there was an awful lot of, just push on to the next level, and then you'll get all these cool more things, and it'll trickle down, and all your systems will get that much incrementally better. Or you might even be able to trade up to a bigger model of thing. It felt calculated in a way that I don't often feel it's calculated in a lot of tabletop role-playing games, possibly because a lot of tabletop role-playing games designers don't think about things in those terms.
that's D&D DNA
Yeah.
right there. It's like, oh, I just got to get to 5th level, and then I'll have Cloud Kill, and I'll show them all.
Yeah. Just cast Cloud Kill at the entrance of the cave and let it just flow down.
Oh, Dr. Spooky, you just thought you could Cloud Kill your problems away, did you?
Yeah. That is also from 4th Ed, which probably maybe not even 4th Ed, but the Milestone system, which was presented, I remember in 4th Ed, it may have been presented before, as an alternative leveling system where instead of, okay, you kill, 10 CR monsters where blah, blah, this many experience points divided by this many players, so you each get 500 XP. That was sort of like the 3rd Ed system. In the Milestone system, it's like, all right, you finished your first mission to rescue the merchant's daughter from the hobgoblins. So you each get a level up because that's a major story beat. So it's tied more as like basically thinking of like a story arc of like not of a single movie, but of a television series. So every time the characters reveal a major plot point, they would get a level up. And downtime has been a lot of games have done that. We did talk about Blades in the Dark, obviously in the last episode, but also games like Torchbearer and Red Markets, and again, just resting in full rests versus short rests in D&D and many other similar systems. So that's what I think it's drawing inspiration from. Now, mobile games obviously do, especially have the downtime. Like you have to wait 6 hours before you can make your next move, or you can pay to move again immediately. So, but I feel like that's the Milestones from 4th Ed are the most obvious inspiration to me. Because the thing about 4th Ed D&D, at least from my perception, is that there's a huge group of players who hated it when it came out and really hated it afterwards. But there was this really noticeable contingent of people like, I really like 4th Ed. Like anyone could pick any class and make it work. If by the time you're 7th level, it wasn't like the fighter can swing his sword faster and the wizard can turn invisible, fly, and cast fireballs from a high, while the guy swung the sword harder. It was more like the fighter could do this and this really cool stunt and this really cool thing to compete with the wizard.
There weren't bad choices. A lot of people like there to be bad choices.
System mastery.
Yeah, people who want to be good at something are like, well, I would like there to be some pitfalls that the noobs will fall into. So
you pick toughness as your feat? Oh, yeah, 3 hit points, big deal. Yeah. I pick spell focus, so my sleep spell is harder to resist, so we can just bulldoze these goblins because I can make them sleep. They can't get a save, and I just slit all their throats. All right, we're done. All right, now I'm just going to go sleep so I get my spell back, and we can do rinse and repeat until...
You have now had fun.
Yeah, exactly. So... Yeah, I feel like that's again the biggest thing. The structure of Lancer as a game is that you have narrative play, your mission briefings and your introduction and your role playing, followed by a big mission, a combat, and then after the combat you would have downtime. Now and it does give a difference between like short rests between fights, like a mission would be multiple fights, like in D&D, and after 3 or 4 fights you complete the mission. Like kill the bad guy. Okay, first you have to defeat the perimeter guards. Then, you have to sabotage the generator to open the inner door, and then you would confront the boss. So that's 3, and then you have to escape. So that's 4 fights. And then once you get out and you've killed the boss and you've escaped, then you would level up your characters. Or get a new license level in your case. So that's sort of the gameplay loop.
It's interesting you say that about the sequences there, because there's a bit that I've actually got highlighted here. I should have taken the page number. For the way that the non-mech stuff, when you're running around as the human step, I'm a role player. I'm a narrativist. I'm able to get entire role playing sessions out of a visit to the hairdresser. I kind of expect games, particularly modern games, to allow for that. And there's a bit, I'm going to read this here. For plans with several distinct stages, an extended challenge might be appropriate. An extended challenge has several rounds of rolling, and the outcome is calculated based on the number of rounds won by the players. For instance, an extended challenge with 3 rounds might require the players to gain the Baron's, there's a word missing, plant information in the Baron's castle, and then sabotage the gate. The players are only truly successful if the majority of these tasks, 2 out of 3 in this case, are accomplished. So that's 2 out of 3 rolls from my reading. Yeah. So that's like role playing in fast forward. That's you're going through what for me is the plot and the interesting part, because as I say, I play role playing games to play roles, not to move figures about on a table, and I may be in a minority.
Again, that's from 4th Ed D&D. In 4th Ed D&D, they had skill challenges, which was get so many successes before so many failures to do, like solve the puzzle or investigate the murder.
But this seems to be the whole, it's basically it's the whole plot of Where Eagles Dare in 3 dice rolls.
Well, right. And part of this is I'm trying to remember which game it was where the big. They're like, okay, here's the big killer app of this game. When I describe this, you may remember it better than my feeble mind has. But it's like, okay, you can just roll not for a task, but to do the whole thing that you have dialed out. And it's not, okay, I'm going to roll to get over the fence, and I'm going to roll to avoid the guards, and I'm going to roll to unlock the door, and I'm going to roll to hide while I move through the building. It's just the challenge is, can I get in? And if you roll successfully, you got in, and your GM is not allowed to throw more malarkey at you where it's like, oh, but did you think of this? Oh, but there's a guard. No, it's like you either roll and get in or you don't. And that it does, and I think which is maybe an extreme reaction to the question of pacing and how intense you want something to be. And I feel like pacing can be very important, and that not every game pays a lot of attention to, and not every GM pays a lot of attention to pacing and the tools for making something slow down when it's really intense and cool, and making something speed up when nobody cares about it. Although the making things speed up when nobody cares about it aspect, I think, is handled a little more often and a little more intelligently. It's something everybody can get behind. It's going all the way back to say yes or roll the dice. Yeah. And so the question to answer for a game when you're designing it in many ways is, what's the good bit? And when you know what the good bit is, you focus on that, and the good bit gets more detailed and intensive rules and more time at the table, and everything else exists just as support for the good bit. And in this, the good bit is clearly the mech fights. They clearly consider that the meat, and everything else is the side dish. Which, an interesting choice I noticed was how easy the challenges outside of mech combat look. Yeah. It looks like you have a base 50% chance of just succeeding at every roll. And then if you're good at it, your chances are that much better. I'm like, well, damn, that's,
I mean, part of that is intentional because your Lancers are the best of the best. Like, they're supposed to be elite with years of training. And you can role player describe, I have cybernetic implants, or I've, warrior culture bred for generations, whatever you want to say. But yeah, Lancers, obviously you don't play Lancer unless you want really tactical crunchy combat.
Yeah.
The role play, the narrative stuff is there, so it's not just entirely free form. But I think the developers expect most player groups to use the narrative rules as a suggestion or a guideline to say, well, okay, you're trying to convince the tribe, to join your cause to fight the bandits. Now, if you succeed, then they'll just join you and your fight will be easier. But if you don't, then the fight will be harder because you don't have this one-time bonus that they would confer. Like that is because, so it's design intent, I think. And I think that's a sign of a good modern game is that it has a very focused design intent. And so, obviously this is outside their area of focus.
Well, and this raises the question of, and I think we're sort of in the how it does it section of the discussion now.
I was about to say we've moved.
What it does is explain why you are having all these mech fights, and how it does it is the mechanical division between mech fights and all the other crap. And so my feeling is that the setting is presented. I'm not sure this is the best possible setting for a game whose focus is mech fights, which are, even as they describe it, it's like, the mechs are above the infantry grunts who do most of the war fighting, but they are still nothing compared to these capital ships that are kilometers long. And, if you're involved in a big space battle, your role is get in your mech and try a boarding action on a medium-sized vessel, because that once you have the medium-sized vessels out of the way, it makes it much easier for your command ship to just vaporize everything.
Well, I mean, it's again, the setting is sort of a backdrop for you to create whatever scenario you want. Now, they have provided a campaign to sort of illustrate the kind of storytelling and the kind of battles that they think would best showcase the game. The campaign is called No Room for a Wallflower, and I'll be spoiling some elements of it. For those of you listening, So in No Room for a Wallflower, for example, you're going to this colony world, and you're literally the only military support the Union is sending to this one colony where it was colonized because they didn't think anyone was living there. But they found out that there are people living there. And in fact, a war was fought there centuries ago. And the major antagonist of the campaign, spoiler alert again, is actually a advanced AI called an NHP, non-human personality, that has reactivated, and its damage, its programming is damaged. So its last mission parameters were to, basically kill everyone on the planet. And so it reactivates. And so this is a planet that was, centuries old battles. And so all these robots are being reactivated. So it's just littered with, countless robots and war machines that can be reactivated by this AI.
And therefore opportunities to beat them up.
Yeah. And so you're trying to protect the colony from this horde of ancient war machines, centuries old war machines that are coming after you. And it culminates, the campaign culminates in a fight against one of these AIs, or a splinter, a spin-off from the main AI, and it's called an Eidolon. And they actually have new rules to fight this, because it's a boss fight with multiple, not layers, but phases. And so either they give you 20 possible phases, and you would roll or you just pick 3, and each phase has a gimmick. So it would be like a puzzle fight at the end. But early missions would be fighting off rogue machines that are appearing at the perimeter, or trying to get this other group of humans. They think the colony's to blame for the attack, so they attack the colony, and then going over and trying to help them out so that they side, so you can have a unified front. And so there would be a mix of, and protecting the refugees as they're fleeing from the machine army. So those are the kind of, so that campaign kind of shows what kind of battles. It's not just boarding actions in space.
No, I never said it was just boarding actions in space, but the breadth of the implied setting. I mean, at one point, don't they actually refer to you as a speck on the lens?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to the Warhammer 40K aspect of it, it's big. It's a big place. So with a lot of stuff happening. Yeah.
But at the same time, they say right at the start that you're supposed to be, it's a crucial, it's a turning point moment in the history of future civilization, and you are at that fulcrum point. You are supposed, it sells itself going, you are the one who is going to make all the changes. You are crucial to whatever happens next. And then it doesn't really deliver that.
Yeah. I mean, I would be tempted to... the things I'd be tempted to do with Lancer, because like James, and I will put my preferences on my sleeve here, is this is not the kind of game I usually play.
Sure.
But if I was going to play Lancer, the temptation I would have would be one, okay, we'll keep the split between X and everything else, only the X is going to be political maneuvering with reign rules. That would be temptation number one. And it's like, yeah, you're Union diplomats, and you got to deal with those, those jerks at Harrison Armory. They need to be taken down a full peg. Option B, and which shows that I am not entirely averse to giant robots. Ages ago, I did Meatbot Massacre, my take on giant robot rules, and I'm like, oh, could I just pull out this 4E descended thing and replace it with another set of rules? I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. And however I wound up doing it, I would probably, for the battle mat battles, be building little mechs out of Legos to be like, okay, here's the one you've got. And I can see that being just a sort of a delightful diversion.
That would be cool. Can I jump in with my version of what I would do with it?
You do with it?
Sure.
I would rewrite some of the mech powers, because they have so many cool powers and so many cool ways of doing it and so many bits of Eldritch technology, and they break the background. Some of the mechs can teleport. The trouble is, at that point, and it's like page 65 or something, they go, oh, and some of the mechs can teleport. It's like, wait, okay, so this is a future which has easily available 3D printable teleportation technology. That changes the entire the entire structure of your society. And also, it changes the entire structure of most of your weapons. If my mech can teleport, why can't I just teleport a bomb inside the other mech? It's like the moment in Star Wars The Last Jedi, where they do there's the enormously dramatic spoilers for The Last Jedi, where they go, oh my god, what we're going to do is we're going to, it's supposed to be a big surprise, ram Snoke's flagship with the Rebel flagship accelerating to light speed. And it's like, okay, so you can do that. So why haven't you been doing that for the last 40 years while you've been fighting these people? Why haven't you built ships specifically to ram your adversaries at light speed? Is this supposed to be... Did you just suddenly think of this?
No.
It's for those of us who think in plot and story terms, and I've spent a large part of my career professionally taking stories apart, it's suddenly, oh god, no. You probably thought this was clever when you wrote it in the script, but it breaks the background. I like a coherent background, and it just, there are lots of things to love in the Lancer background, but I didn't feel it cohered. I didn't believe it.
Okay, I mean that's fair. I mean, a lot of it is explained as weird science that, for example, these NHPs, which are kind of like a major plot element of the setting, can do things and send blueprints to pilots, provide scientific technical information that they can't fully understand, and there are still limitations to it, or that you need a license level in order to print this kind of mecha out, so they can't be mass reproduced. There are mechanisms, some kind of mechanism to prevent mass reproduction of this technology, at least on some level. Any
engineer it's an issue that came up with D&D spells, where as soon as engineers get a hold of it and they're like, wait, you can create fire from nothing.
Right.
Why is this not an industrial revolution that would make the one we had here with real science look like nothing?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's like, you have teleportation? Yeah, that's going to change a lot more than just, oh, well, I can move 2 hexes without having to worry about the heavy cover that's between me and my objective.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it's a cool mech power, but it doesn't... The moment you get away from the mech combat stuff, it changes stuff.
Sure.
And you never get the opportunity to use it outside of the mech combat stuff.
No.
Well, again, I mean, there's again, the narrative section is more freeform, so there would be nothing preventing a GM from saying, "Yeah, you can use your teleportation power to rescue those, those orphans from the orphanarium that's on fire." So,
if you hit your 50%,
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and there are difficulty adjustments, so that would have a penalty, or that would be a higher difficulty. Or
otherwise, they're going to come out phased halfway.
Right. That's the kind of thing that would be pretty easily adjudicated. But I guess we should talk about like how it does it in base terms for the listeners who aren't aware of it. Combat is done on a hex grid usually, and it's D20 base in that you roll initiative and
you don't roll initiative.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I've spent too much of my life designing and redesigning initiative systems and occasionally fighting co-designers who want to take them out. Yeah. The initiative, and I went over this in some detail just last night, it's basically you decide who goes first. The players decide in what order they go, and then one player goes, and then one of the enemy goes. The GM decides which enemy goes. And it's really board gamey, and it really works, and it's not realistic, but then I've yet to actually see an RPG initiative system that was realistic and wasn't boring. Initiative systems are hard. This one it feels like a game, but it works. And my hat is off. That is a splendid piece of design. Anyway, okay.
That's a good one. I've only played it once, and I've only read the rules partially. I do want to eventually run it myself, but you would set up and you take turns fighting each other. Now, mechs have both hit points and structure. So when you make an attack roll and attack somebody, you would inflict hit point damage. When their hit points go to 0, they would lose that 1 point of structure, and which resets their hit points to full, but then they have to make a structure check. Every structure check you do, you have a chance, you could be immobilized or stunned, or lose a weapon system or some other system, or if you roll really badly, just blow up. And if you lose multiple structure points, you have to roll a d6 for every single structure point. So if you roll multiple ones, you just immediately explode. Mechs also have heat, which a lot of systems will generate heat, and if you get in the danger zone, you're visibly like trying to cool. Steam's coming out, your vents are open, and you're exposed to certain dangers. And then you can also, if you get too much heat, you can melt down and explode again. Also, all mechs are able to hack one another, although some mechs are much better at it than others. Mm-hmm. And those can inflict status conditions on enemy mechs. And if you're a hacking focused mech, you can do a lot of very nasty things. So aside from shooting, punching, or lasering or shooting missiles at one another, you can also hack them or use weapons that cause them to overheat. Yeah, and mechs can take a lot of damage before they blow up, or one really good hit can take them out instantly. So in a lot of ways, it's like a lot of war games. This actually reminds me of actually Warhammer 40K and Conflict 47 and other war games that I've played, where like a really good critical hit on a tank can instantly blow it up, or the tank can take 30 hits and just they're all glancing blows, and inflict very, very little damage. And yeah, you just go back and forth taking turns. In terms of leveling up in the license system, all mech pilots start with the Everest, which is specifically shown not have art, so you can have your own image of it. But you get to customize it with different weapon systems. And when you get license level 1, you can pick one of the other mechs, and you do not get access to the full mech yet, but you get access to some of its weapons. So you can actually mix and match between mechs. So you could get the weapon of one mech and then the frame, the actual mech of another one. So in some ways it's like D&D class in 4th ed or 3rd ed, where you can like, oh, I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and make my min-max system, or dive really deep into one mech and get all of its special weapons and abilities. And so that's, then you just do fights. But I think that's the main thing, is that there's heat, there's hacking, and the license systems allows you to mix and match and customize your mech to a very, very large extent. And that's sort of where the bulk, and there's a lot of different damage types and types of weapons. So yeah,
there is the, just earlier today, I was talking about how I remember somebody on a web forum long ago arguing that unless a game had a list of things you could buy with prices, it was not a proper role-playing game.
Wow.
Seemed a really weird hill to die on, even in like 1992 or whatever. But what this has made me think, what reading Lancer has made me wonder is it possible to make a game that is all a gear list, where almost as a design challenge, I kind of want to do it, where with the A gears, all the gears that explain how the core mechanics work would have to be in the entries for things that start with A, and then, resolve the resolution mechanics would all have to be explained as if in passing in the gear that starts with B. So I think it could be done. I don't know if it's worth doing.
Some would say games like Shadowrun or Battletech have already done that. So, but hey-o. Yeah.
You've got a rim shot sound effect that you can splice in there, right?
Yeah. Let me just make a note right there.
Oh, while we're talking about things that you could splice in, you could take my rant about the use of the future conditional, speed it up 50%, and just slam that in here, because again, it's not really bad. It's in and out. It's less common than it was in Water Margin, or which was less common than Blades in the Dark, but it's still there. It still makes it. It's still like getting poked with a needle every time I see it. Get rid of will, people. Surrender your will. It's not helping you.
Yeah. But the thing I like about the way they've structured the combat and the way you can customize your mech, and again, this is a 4th ed thing. If you look at character classes, and in 4th edition, it very much, it doesn't mirror, but is clearly inspired by, also like in terms of how they lay it out. And in terms of its graphic design for presentation, is that there are a lot of different valid strategies for defeating your foes. You could choose, so there's a lot of different play styles within that, in terms of like building. They categorize mech by what their role in the battle is, whether they're a striker or support or defender. So players get the option to really build the mech that they think would be coolest or most fun to play. Do you want to be the up close and personal, nothing personal kid ninja assassin with a super cool sword? Well, you can do that. Or do you want to be someone who hides behind cover and launches artillery from afar? Or do you want to be the leader that helps everyone else do their thing? Or even repair your buddies in battle, the cleric, essentially.
It did feel very much like that list of archetypes that, which MMOs have really taken to the next level of kind of formalizing that there will be, the tank and the DPS and the support and the stealthy one. And they're all in here except the tank, which is kind of bizarre because mechs are tanks. They're just vertical tanks. Although I don't know, the kind of vertical tanks. I was building up to that one. But one thing I did notice, and this is a tiny footnote, is that all the mechs think of a Battletech mech. Think of the cover of classic Battletech. You've got that. I don't know the different Battletech models, but it's this massive structure with two enormous arms and two enormous guns suspended from the arms. The guns are built right into the arms. Every single mech in Lancer has hands. There are, or at least all the artwork, they are all illustrated with very human-like hands. And this goes back to what I was saying about the kind of the essentially the magic robots versus the real robots, that dichotomy that lies at the heart of what a giant robot game thinks it is and what it's doing. These giant robots are essentially beings. They are not machines, I would say. And as you're playing them in terms of almost Jungian style, it's you as, it's not, there's no separation between you, the pilot, and you, the thing. You are the thing. You're being the thing, represented by a small miniature on the table or whatever it is. I'm not going anywhere particular with that. I just wanted to point it out because I didn't get to put it in earlier on.
I think the Lancaster doesn't have hands.
Does it? Yeah. Hang on.
Yeah, that's also in Battletech, there's the Urban Bot or the Urban Mech, which is famously just a little trash can with a cannon on it. So yeah, this is definitely a game for people who want to like look at a list of weapons like, oh, I want this, I don't want this, I want to have this kind of cool thing. And one thing to note is also not every single option is for combat. If you notice a lot of the, especially looking at the GMS general market systems, you can customize your mech by spending system points, I believe. And some of these system point options you can get, you have a budget of like 6 points to spend on various things, anything like smoke charges or a turret drone. But you can also get like manipulators, an extra set of limbs. They let you interact with objects that are too small for a normal mech to interact with. So that's entirely like a narrative choice. It could be very useful. Be like, oh, the VIP is wounded. You need to perform first aid on him. So normally be like, well, because you don't have manipulator arms, you have to get out of your mech and actually do it as a pilot. So yeah, the GM can use that to, you need to carry the radioactive dirty bomb out of the thing, but it's a suitcase. Your mech can't pick it up.
I can picture the scene in the movie where the mech is trying to pick up the suitcase and it's just squirting out of the fingers. And like, damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I will give you, the Lancaster does not have hands. This is because the Lancaster is a 4-legged robot that looks like a 12-meter tall one of those Boston Dynamics robot dogs.
Big dog.
Yeah.
They are gonna live in our dreams forever once they turn on us.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I've seen videos of exactly the dance they will do on top of my grave.
Yeah. But if you want to, for the listeners out there, if you want to see more of how Lancer does what it does, there's a YouTube channel, Dragon Kid 11, I believe, or 11 Dragon Kid, who does these really good actual play videos that are summaries of playing on a virtual tabletop, and they sort of explain what's happening. Like this mission, they're trying to get the VIP from point A to point B. Enemies are trying to stop them from doing that, and so like a 3-hour play session will be summarized in a 15-minute video. So it's very fast paced, and you're not going to know everything because the Dragon Kid plays at a high license level. So the players have a lot of crazy abilities. You know, like, oh, well, this player deployed something that has a 50 hex radius around them, and anytime an enemy moves, they take 3 damage because they just shot thousands of little micro charges to blow up whenever they sense someone without the friendly tag on them. So, crazy stuff like that. So that's a good way of seeing that, and maybe we should move on to how people play it. Because I actually have done this a little bit, and I've studied other people on how to play that. The main thing about Lancer is that obviously if you're playing in tabletop, you cannot do this in Theater of the Mind. You would need a grid and miniatures. So in a lot of ways, it is a role-playing game, but it's also like a skirmish game like Warhammer 40K or Gloomhaven. I think I've played a lot of Gloomhaven. I did play a lot of Gloomhaven before the pandemic, and so it reminds me of that because everyone needs to sort of pay attention and understand what their mech can do and what the other players are doing to sort of optimize and fight. And it's a cooperative challenge for you all. Can you defeat these enemies and complete the objective?
Using teamwork and the power of family.
Yeah, exactly. Use those bonded and leadership talent. Family can do anything. If we've learned anything from the Fast and the Furious, it's that. And
well, I was going to look this up on Google, but I'm like, oh, then there will be keyboard clattering on the sound. So I'll just ask you, and you might know this. Mm-hmm. Is Massive selling miniatures? Have they?
No,
they haven't.
They have not. They
like the obvious next step.
Massive, I think they already seem to be working on another role-playing game called Icon. They've released some preview art on their Twitter, which seems to be a deeply to me seems to be inspired by Kill 6 Billion Demons, like the art, but that might just be the artist's art style. So I think Massive style, their emphasis is actually creating a product that is easy for them to sell, in that they've only done a print run of the main Lancer book. All the other supplements have been PDF only. They're not even doing print on demand.
Which is a very interesting choice, and I can see why that's appealing to a lot of people. Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
When I saw that they were doing that, I'm like, oh, they're trying to chart their path off of the Splatbook treadmill, and good on them for that, because it's... it's like the... did you ever play Starfleet Battles back in the day?
I've seen it played. I still have nightmares.
There was a great bit. One of the abilities that the Orion pirates had was engine doubling. And so they had these fairly small engines, but for one turn, you could have twice as much output from your engines. And every action was purchased from your economy of power points. So being able to double your engine was huge. You could just do everything. But every time you did it, it burned out a box of your engine. So the next time you double it, it's a little less. And then the time after that, it's a little less. And of course, the more you use it, the weaker your engines are when you're not using it. And so one of the books described this as the cocaine economy of engine doubling. It feels great at first, but you need to do it more and more, and then it kills you. And that is how I feel about the Splatbook approach that so many companies sort of did, is that you can get people on the treadmill and you can ramp up to the point that you're kicking these things out every month or 3 months or 6 months, but it's not sustainable.
Especially now.
And so the idea that they want to sell the book and maybe have a few other things, but mostly it's just software supporting the book. I'm like, that makes sense.
So they do have 3 supplements out so far. The Long Rim, which is a setting book with new mechs and information about space piracy and some more setting information and options for pilots. Then Battle Group, which is a set of alternate rules for doing giant spaceship fighting using the same sort of framework as Lancer. And then the campaign I mentioned before, No Room for a Wallflower, which I've read and I actually do want to run at some point. But so they're selling PDFs. They're selling very well on itch.io as I understand it. But I think I would be very surprised. I would not be very surprised if more people play this on virtual tabletop than in person. I think it is a game in a lot of ways optimized and focused on the virtual tabletop community because there's a lot of fan support for the game. There are websites like Retrograde Minis, which is a generator to create pixel artwork of your miniature, so you could download a PNG and an image that you could then upload to a virtual tabletop. Then there is CompCon, which is a web app for character creation, encounter building, a lot of useful stuff. So like when I run it in person, I'm going to have a laptop running CompCon, so I can keep track of all the NPC stats, all the enemy stats.
But running it in person, are you going to build mechs out of Legos?
We could. I was actually thinking about using Retrograde Mini and printing those minis out and then just making little paper minis.
The little standees?
Yeah. My friend Caleb actually found like a thing on Amazon where you can get 100 mechs for like $10 on Amazon. They're all like cheap, super cheap plastic, like kind of almost like rubber. Like they're very, so we might use a combination of them.
Isn't that where most of the original D&D monsters came from? Rubbery stuff bought, from obscure places in China. So it feels like a traditional part of the role-playing experience.
So I think that also ties into why people play it that way. Lancer came out right before the pandemic, and I think a lot of people have leaned into, and I think even before they're sort of leaning in towards this space that is, I think, maybe underutilized in a lot of ways, or it is a growing part of our hobby is the virtual tabletop. And I think there's a lot of people who like playing virtual tabletop games and can't meet other people or don't have the physical space to play a game like this. And it craves an itch because one thing, it's more clearly known, like D&D has the dungeon crawl, this has the mech fight. So like it has a very clear beginning, middle, end of a session. So you could play it with relative strangers. It's not like a game of Hill Folk, for example, or even Blades in the Dark, where you do character creation together.
Right. So the advantage is that it is anonymous and not, super intensely ongoing. But this is probably the disadvantage, too. As with everything, the big advantage is the same as the big disadvantage. Mm-hmm. You are not going to get if it's a pickup game where people are dropping in and out, you're not going to get the depth of characterization you do when you have the same 4 people playing Unknown Armies or Vampire the Masquerade for a lengthy campaign, or even something that's not as explicitly character based as one of those games, even a more externally focused game. When you have the same people playing the same characters for a long run, all this stuff builds up. And it sounds like this, on one hand, is like, the good news is it's not a lifetime commitment. The bad news is it's not a lifetime commitment.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a different type of game, a different type of experience than like a Unknown Armies game, because like you're not going to get like super satisfying tactical combat out of Unknown Armies. That's not what it's about. Yeah.
You will get at that. I'm gonna jump out from behind the woodshed, hit him with the axe handle.
I mean, I think part of Lancer's appeal is also like people who like, a tactical combat game, and also maybe they're uncomfortable with the fan bases and some of the implications of the settings of the other popular games in that series. I mean, like, Warhammer 40K, the main human faction is a theocratic fascism. Like it's kind of maybe not so fun for your game, if you want to have an escapist fantasy, like maybe something where it's like the Federation, but with cool robots that goes and saves the planet of the week. Maybe that's a little more appealing to you. Yeah. So I think that kind of explains part of the appeal of it, or like certainly what the designers were trying to go after, is to have a game that wasn't like sort of bogged down in implications of other settings that feature this kind of gameplay. Yeah,
one of the things they talk about is there aren't aliens you're gonna encounter. There aren't intelligent aliens you're gonna encounter, because humankind encountered one group of intelligent aliens and genocided them, and that's kind of this giant historical scar on the Union worlds, where they're just like, I can't believe we did that. That was our biggest error, even though they were aggressive, but shit, we were aggressive.
Now, I should be saying, I'm not trying to say that like in Lancer it's very clearly black and white. Like actually, the campaign, again, spoilers for it, really deals with the legacy of like old warfare and colonialism, and because like the colony you show up to support, they find out that there's another group of humans there that have been there for a while, and like there's a lot of tension between the two. It's like we've been living here for generations. What the fuck are you guys doing here? And
that was one bit I did like in the background where it talked about how first they launched the old slow boat colony ships, and they're aimed at this planet, and it's like, yes, in 10 generations we will reach our new home, our promised land. And, you know, their whole culture becomes based around, you know, when we make landfall and we know exactly what it's going to happen. And, you know, and it's only 5 generations now, and, you know, it's only 2 generations. But meanwhile, Earth's engines got much better, and they're like, oh yeah, we can launch one that'll get there without it having to be a generation ship. And so they arrive at their promised land, and there's people already there who weren't, who left generations and decades after they did.
And therefore have better technology as well.
Yeah.
Yep. A bitter pill.
Yeah, so you can get dark or serious with Lancer as well. I mean, the setting isn't shying away from those things as well. But the idea is that instead of playing, you know, like the Imperium in 40K, you're playing the faction that is ostensibly good or heroic. And we're fighting the good fight is what you're trying to do in Lancer. You know, you're trying to be the fulcrum point instead, or you know, the turning point of history. The soldiers, like in again the campaign, the No Room for Wallflower. It's basically your squad, your player characters who are there to like, you either stop the machine horde or you don't. You either eventually do a decapitation strike to take out the AI, or the AI takes over the planet and wipes everyone out. Something for people who like this play, but maybe
don't want to fully jump into the jackboots of a colonizer.
Or you can just kind of ignore and play like, we're mercenaries, we take jobs, and like, okay, yeah, you can do that. If you don't want to think about the, get politics in my game, how dare you?
No, not that.
But yeah, it's a type of gameplay that a lot of very few other role-playing games really get into, especially in this depth. It's a very satisfying to be part of a team of players that like finally takes down the bad guy with a lucky critical hit or like a good plan where, you know, one player hacks them to, you know, make sure that their attacks miss, while the other player absorbs whatever attacks get through, so the one player can deal the killing blow. You know, that's the core of the game, and I don't really
that had the like tethered harpoon, so you can just staple an enemy to the ground and they can't move around.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's so many mechs. There are a lot of mechs, and every single mech has a cool thing to it.
An awful lot of this book is taken up with cool mechs and places for them to fight in.
I think that's another thing of it too. Is like the Lancer. The idea is every mech has a cool gimmick or unique ability, so that every player has like, oh, well, my mech can do this cool thing. And like my mech's a gunslinger with giant pistols, or my mech is a ninja who can teleport behind you and cut you in half. And so everybody has that cool thing that they can do and that no one else can do very well. And also, I do also like in the design, we haven't mentioned that the NPCs are designed differently than players. So you don't like just recreate the player character process. So they have mechs too, but they have different abilities and they don't work as well. They do not work identically to the player character mechs. You could say that, oh, this is the same type of mech that you saw earlier that, you know, Bob used to play as. But mechanically, the game rules would be different for the NPC mechs. So I like that too. Certainly makes it easy for the GM.
Do a little quick math, because the actual description of actual mechs and systems starts on page 118 and goes through 253. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there is a lot of the book. A lot of the book is the gear list, as we mentioned earlier, and some people are going to hear that and go, oh, that's awful. And other people are going to hear that and go, oh, that's wonderful. And I think it is a great strength of the game's identity that you will clearly know from hearing that whether it's your bag or not. There's not going to be a lot of people who are like, oh, I got into Lancer not knowing what it was gonna be like.
Yeah, and I would say if you like giant robot games, if you're playing a different giant robot game, Lancer is worth it just for the breadth and depth and intelligence that's gone into an awful lot of them, and the art as well, the mech designs really that are in there. Just, treat it like a source book for new mechs to put the fear of God in your players.
Yeah.
What is that thing? Does it have human feet? Those feet look like human feet. Okay.
I mean, did it teleport?
Yeah, you could take a lot of these mechs and put them in other sci-fi games and use their gimmicks, recreate their gimmicks as bosses for other games. So yeah, the teleporting mech with the monofilament sword would put that would be pretty scary in any number of games. So yeah, maybe as a boss fight or something.
Oh, that's the Morning Cloak, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a funky looking one.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the Horus mechs are my personal favorite. We don't know who designs these, and they are given out randomly to people. We think some sort of AI god is creating these mechs and giving them to certain pilots for reasons. Don't worry about it. Anyways, this one can hack reality. Yeah.
If I was gonna play, the mech I would pick would be the Horus Pegasus. That's just, it looks like a dog with human hands and a sphere of pure black nothingness hovering over its lower back. It's funky.
There's a Horus mech in the Long Rim supplement called the Lich, whose gimmick is that it can set a point on the map and then move away from that point, and then if it dies, it can just reset itself to that point. So, and once per round, it can just reverse time locally, so it can ignore any one attack once per round.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so things get weird in this game. And so it's a breath of fresh air in the mech space, which has been, I think, dominated either by Battletech style or Robotech style mechs. And yeah, it's nice to see something new. Very new, very different. So yeah. James, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of stuff in here. The fluff is great. I did feel it suffered from J.K. Rowling syndrome, that there was nobody involved in the process to go, okay, enough. At this point, you're just writing more words. Mm-hmm. And they're good words, but I felt if this was a board game, it would be a brain burner. I was 30 pages in. I already felt overwhelmed by powers and terms and stuff.
Sure.
At that point, that was the point I basically went, I'm going to enjoy reading this, not actually going to pay attention to the details of the mechanics. I'll just ingest it and I will never play it. I think sorry, Greg, you go ahead.
Most of those tags make sense, but there are so many of them.
Mm-hmm. They do, and this is where the app becomes really useful, because it's a lot easier to use that than it is to keep leafing through your book, whether it's a physical book or a PDF. That, I think, is one of the great strengths, that the app actually exists. At the same time, there is an awful lot on board with this game before you can start playing. Yep. If people are still unsure about the tone of it, there's very early on, the game introduces you to the 2 key rules, and I read that and I went, oh, okay, is this going to be spirit of the game? Is it going to be about when you can't find the correct mechanic? The 2 key rules are, 1, specific rules override general statements and rules, and 2, always round up to the nearest whole number. Those are the 2 key rules for Lancer. If that doesn't sound like fun to you, don't go there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's a lot to like in here. There's a lot of imagination. I would say enough imagination going on in here for at least 2, possibly 3 regular role-playing games.
Cool. Well, Greg, any final thoughts?
I think I've covered everything,
okay.
Honestly. So...
All right. Well, and you certainly heard my views on the game. I quite like Lancer. Hopefully we'll be doing some more actual plays of it on Roleplaying Public Radio. But yeah, so we'll thank you all for listening, and we will have the next game announced hopefully by the time you listen to this. So,
where did we land on me being allowed to, tell people how to vote or, tell people what game to read yet? Okay, do you guys have any game where you're like, oh boy, I hope they pick that one? Because for me, it's got to be 1,000-Year-Old Vampire.
I would not be opposed to that. I'm going to be honest. I think we put all the games on there for a reason. I'd be happy to talk about any of them. But 1,000-Year Vampire, I do have a copy of that game, so I would love an excuse to check it out.
And it's probably cheaper than the massive hardback that I got.
No, yeah, I actually got the hardback as a Christmas gift, so that's why I'm excited to play it. James, what are you interested in checking out?
It's 1:00 in the morning, essentially Saturday morning after a full week of heavy work. I can't remember what's on the list, and I don't care.
Okay, fair enough.
Vote for stuff. You backed it. You get to choose.
All right. With that in mind, we'll talk to you all later.
We will free James for Slumberland. Sleep well, James.
I will. Just a footnote, any strange noises are probably the cat, which I've been trying to get rid of for most of this podcast and will not leave me alone. I apologize.
Yep.
All right. Well, tell your cat we love them. All right. Bye.
Talk to you later, everybody.
This episode was made possible by backers like Ryan Mannix and Brownie Davis. Thank you.